You're now listening to the Young, Educated, and Uncertain podcast with your host, Rashad Young.
What's going on, my podcast family, man? Welcome back to another episode of the Young, Educated, and Uncertain podcast. I appreciate you all tuning in. Thank you for all the new listeners, the old listeners, everybody in between. I appreciate it. If you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you click that thumbs up and the subscribe button for more content coming soon. So it's been a minute since it's been me. It's not an interview today. It's not a conversation. I want to add something of a new element towards this podcast while I am in the process of still having conversations, which is still going to be a focal point. But, you know, the importance of this podcast is always to educate and to enlighten and to inspire through books, ideas, and conversations. Well, I want to get back into the book side of things, and I wanted to start a series with various books that I have read that have added some sort of value into my life, and hopefully it can bring some value into yours as well. So first of all, give it up for yourself. Yeah, give it up for yourself for another day. All right, give it up for yourself for another day, another gear. I just bought me a new mixer, so I got like different things on there I'm super excited about. But give it up for yourself another week. Be thankful that there's another week to be alive and to go after the things that are important to you. I know oftentimes it's tough in this space in the world that we're in today with everything that's going on. But more importantly, if you have breath in your body and you're alive and you're able to do things and you're able to help and inspire others, man, I commend you to keep doing it, and obviously pray for your safety and peace during this time. So, but let's move forward into it, man. So the book I want to present to you is, first and foremost, Mama, I know you be watching and listening. I'm not going to cuss, but this is just the title of the book, so just be prepared. So the name of the book, it's one of my favorite books. It is The Subtle Art of Not Giving a I didn't cuss, Mama. You know what I mean? But this book right here, I want you to see it. This book right here is one of my favorite books that I was introduced to about a year ago. I have that book, and also Everything Is. That's another book that he has written. It's written by the author, Mark Manson, who is an author of the New York Times bestseller. He sold over 5 million copies with this book. But I wanted to start with this book because this book is very counterintuitive to how most of us as people live this life. And I may not go exactly throughout the entire book. It kind of just depends on, me rereading it again and deciding what parts are important. But this first part of the book, the very first chapter I wanted to dive into today, not super long, but very excited about it. So the first chapter of the book is called Don't Try. Now, Don't Try is very, for this book to be considered a self-help book, you wouldn't think of the way for this book to start off to be Don't Try. In this book, I wouldn't even consider it self-help. I would consider it a lot more of a it's total opposite of that. I think it's more so self-reflection. And the reason I say that is because the outlook on how this book goes off is very different from the world that we live in today. And he talks about this in this book. And in the first part of the book, he starts off with a person named Charles Bowatsky. I'm sorry if I didn't say that right, but it was a guy who was considered basically a deadbeat, a drunk. Essentially, he considered himself a loser in life, but his one gift in life was poetry. He was a poet. And throughout all his bad times, throughout all the things he did negative in his life, the one thing that he did was he had the opportunity to sell thousands and thousands of his copies with his poetry. But on his gravesite, on his tombstone, it said, "Don't try." And I was thinking to myself, I wonder what he was saying in those moments when he meant don't try. I think, in the book, Mark highlights the importance of looking at everything throughout the entire lens of the world. So, the duality between positivity and negativity. We live in a very positive centric based culture. We have all these different products to help lose weight or, help with our self-esteem or with our mental beings. We have, different ads to show, swimsuits for women who have bodies a certain type of way. But there's always something being thrown in your face for you to think that you are not good enough. So you need this product in order to feel like you're good enough. And so he dives into so many things, but there's a couple things that I think that are so important. So first off, like I said, this book isn't really positive at all. It's actually a lot more darker. But he really dives into the notion of why we as people spend most of our time in life trying to get people to care about the same things that we care about, but also understanding that we waste a lot of time and energy on things that we shouldn't care about. And that's one of the reasons why he said we shouldn't give a. That's because the amount of time and energy we put on trying to fix and save everything. This is something that's very common with a lot of us in our 20s, especially early 30s. We're still trying to figure out our life. We're still trying to figure out our path. We're trying to figure out what we like to do. We have dreams and aspirations. And a lot of us are always trying to find ways to, get our voices heard and our opinions, cemented and people to see the value that we have. And just think about all the times in life where we have really just thrown our own game off because we were so overconsumed with what somebody else thought, said, done. And if you look at it from the entire totality of things, it really didn't affect your life that much. And I mean that in a grand scale of things. I'm not saying what when life happens, with family and friends, those certain things you should care about. But I think the overall purpose of that chapter of the book is understanding is that we spend so much time thinking on stuff that is really not important. We focus on, not having enough followers and trying to be a streamer or a YouTuber or a podcaster or starting a business. We're focused on people not supporting us. We always focus on the negative part of things. Or we're focused too much on the positive part of things and not seeing a balance between how that can be negative as well. And he kind of mentioned that in the book a couple of times on how, he talks about positive affirmations. And this is the wildest thing. I didn't really think about it until he kind of mentioned it in the book, where he was saying that, with our culture being so positive and so consumed with positivity, he said that we say those things to ourselves because we don't believe in those things in ourselves. So we try to reassure ourselves, time after time that, okay, we are beautiful, we are smart, we are talented. But he was questioning, are we saying those things because we believe it? Or are we saying those things because we have such a imprint of negativity about ourselves that we have to regurgitate things over and over and over? He's a firm believer that if you really are confident in yourself and your abilities or your desires or the things that you want in life, you don't really have to talk about it. You just do it and you just kind of go with it. He was saying that a lot of us focus on the what if aspect. What if we fail? What if I fail? What if this doesn't go right? What if this relationship goes left? It's always finding the what if. And he was saying that we're basically missing the present moment of the importance of today. We're missing the importance of today by worried about the what ifs. And he called it the feedback loop of hell. And what the feedback loop of hell basically means is that every time you're thinking something, every time something happens, there's always something that's kind of repeating itself. So like, let's say you are somebody that's highly anxious. Mostly anxiety is thinking about something that hasn't already happened, right? We can agree to disagree, but that's usually what anxiety is. He said within that, you're thinking about you being anxious, and so you're going to be anxious some more. And now you're trying to find a way to get yourself out of being anxious, but you're just driving yourself more and more into the anxious space. And he was saying that you have to sit back and understand that it is okay to be in the space that you are today. And he was overemphasizing that, especially in regards to how we think that being positive all the time changes things. And that kind of I had some pushback with that for the simple fact that, I believe that, positivity is a key cornerstone to most people's successes in life. And you can think of all the most successful people. They've always said that because they had a positive mindset. But I think also the underlying layer in what he was saying is that if we focus so much on the the positive part of things, and we hold on to that positivity standpoint, that we're going to miss the importance of the balance of life and being okay when things aren't okay. And I was like, well, that's a very valid point. And while I know there's a lot of things going on in the world, I always try to remain positive, but I also know that within a positive message, it isn't always effective to everybody else. So let me find a way to think outside the box with my thoughts, my way of going about things, but knowing that, everybody has their own way of finding their balance and things. And it was something that he said, and I'm gonna go to it in the book because it was something that really just stood out to me. Um, he was saying basically it was a quote by Albert Camus, and it says, "You will never be happy if you continue to search for what happiness consists of. You will never live if you're only looking for the meaning of life." And I was like, "Whoa, what does that mean?" I was like, "What does that mean?" It's like, why? What am I searching for then? Am I searching to be happy? And when I do these things, when I do my podcast, if I'm going after other ventures, why am I doing it now? Right. And I think that is something that we have to ask ourselves too, in this space, not just simply with this book, but just with life. Or, when we say these things about ourselves, when we have these different thoughts about ourselves, or when we're comparing ourselves to something else, why are we doing it? What is triggering that thought? What is causing us to be fearful? What is causing us to only be positive when certain things happen? Because I am starting to believe that a lot of us are only positive when good things only come to us. Does that make sense? It's like, so when all the good things are always lining up in our lives, we're always finding ways to stay positive, consistent in that path, in that regard. But what happens when things get tough? What happens when life throws us a curveball, or we lose a loved one, or we lose a job, or our business fails? How do we come back from that? And how do we come back from that adversity? How do we bounce back into that space of like, okay, my back's against the wall, but I believe in myself good enough to know that something good is going to come out of this? How many of us can actually say that to ourselves, that we are fairly confident that if something bad would happen, we will still bounce back, or we will overcome the storm? Obviously, I don't know the answers to that to myself, but I know that that within yourself. And there's 3 points I wanted to get to with this book, and that's just how I'm going to close it off with this episode. First part. This is part 1. Not giving a does not mean being indifferent. It means being comfortable with being different. Let's think about that. Think about how many of us are in a space where we feel like we have to always feel comfortable in order to succeed. A lot of us know that, comfort is really the true stunt of our growth. Because when you're comfortable, that means you're okay with certain things. And not to say that there's nothing wrong with that. Some people are comfortable being speakers or other things, but it was in those moments of incomfort is when they truly shine the most. So that comfort space really start coming into. And, it's one of those things of, it's okay to be different. It's okay to be outside the box. You don't have to be like everybody else. I do believe sometimes we live in a very monkey see, monkey do society where we feel like we have to kind of be a part of the wave to find some sort of relevance or validation within ourselves. When in actuality, we can really, see our true gifts, that we really value being indifferent. A lot of us don't like being indifferent because we're so concerned with what somebody thinks about us. And again, that goes back to the notion of him saying you shouldn't give a because you shouldn't. You shouldn't care what somebody thinks about you. You shouldn't care what people say or think about you, because you have to have a confidence within yourself that you're able to do whatever it is you want to do, no matter what it is. No matter what it is. That's just something to just think about. Just know that we are really choosing to give a every day. Whatever it is, we are literally choosing to give a. Told you I'm not going to cuss. My mom be listening, but that's just something just to think about. We literally have a choice every day when we're deciding to do something. Number 2, to not give a about adversity, you must give a about something more important than adversity, right? So what that means is understanding that there is something that should be more important than the moment that you're in. Does that make sense? So the moment that you're in is a lot larger for it once you understand why, or your purpose of why you're doing something. Okay, so let's say you're jobless, and while that's tough, you should focus not more so on you being jobless. You should focus on what getting a next job will do for you in your life, right? Because when you focus on that one aspect, now while that is important, and while I'm sure that is very life changing, Focusing on that negative aspect so long, you're going to continue to stay in that space, right? Because you're not thinking outside the box. You're just focusing on that one piece. You lost your job because of budget cuts, and you're mad at the government, and you're mad at your boss for not caring. While again, I understand. Maybe we should reframe my thinking into thinking, well, maybe once I figure out what this next job will bring, and let's start putting that energy into that. So you start preparing yourself for that moment to actually decide, while I am in a bad situation, if I change my mindset into thinking there's more I can do, something better will come out of this. And you just continue to have that mindset, and those things will change. Again, I understand it isn't instant, but your mind is truly powerful. Your mind is the source to a lot of things, regardless if you believe in the law of attraction, if you believe in prayer, believe in manifestation, your mindset to a lot of things will determine a lot. And I think that's something that not only this book highlights, but a lot of books highlight. The Bible highlights that, write the vision, make it plain, and understand it within that context of that. It's also understand, there's a patience, there's a process within that too. But if you spend all your time and energy on the small moments of defeats and really putting your emphasis on the moments of actually giving with things that you shouldn't, you're going to lose. You're going to lose. And again, it's not the things that really derail you. It's the small nicks in your pattern of your journey that really can throw you off. So one final thought, one final thing. Part 3 of this first chapter. Whether you realize it or not, you're always choosing what to give about. You are. It's just facts. When we're young, everything is new and exciting, and we care about everything. We should care about, what our friends think. We should care about, who our favorite sports team was, certain things that we will ride with through and through. But the more you get comfortable within yourself, within your own range, within your own realm, within your own internal person, you'll learn that you have the ultimate power to decide what is truly important. You have the ultimate power to decide what you should care about. And again, whatever you put your energy into is going to determine a lot, right? A lot of us sit back on a lot of our gifts because we're always over focused on what somebody thinks and what somebody says about us. Think about it. I've had conversations with people like, man, I want to start a podcast. I'm like, yo, go ahead and do it. Well, I don't have the money, or I don't have this. I'm like, you don't need to have those things. What if nobody listens to it? Well, then they don't. Are you focused on the people that don't listen to it, or are you focused on people that do listen to it? I want to start a business, and I have this great idea, but I just saw my friend, she just made $5,000 in one weekend. Okay, good for them. Are you unable to do that yourself? No, but it's the comparison and contrast game. We cannot do that. He says in the book, I once heard an artist say that when a person has no problems, the mind automatically finds a way to invent some. I think what most people, especially educated, pampered, middle class, well, he said middle class white people consider life problems really just side effects of not having more important things to worry about. While I agree with that last part of the statement, I think that also can tie in what a lot of us as people, I think that we all have some sort of advantage versus somebody else. And while I know there are real world issues going on, and that I will never steer away from that, regardless I'm doing this and that, I put my attention to that as well. I also understand the framework that I have an advantage that some people may not as well. And if I focus on my small nicks, I'm going to miss my purpose of my journey to help people understand what's really going on and teach them how they can change their mind to impact the next person, right? So whatever it is your journey is, whatever it is your life path is, whatever it is your purpose is, or your why, or your desires, or your dream, you have to understand first that your mindset is going to be everything, but also whatever you give about, that's going to also play a part as well. Because each step back, each moment is going to determine a lot. But only you have the true power to determine what you should actually put your energy into or not. That's all I got to say about that, man. That was a real quick episode. I hope y'all doing well, man. Got my music playing. I'm going to cut that off. But, hey, I appreciate y'all. Hope y'all enjoyed this episode. Until next time, my family. Peace.